Oh, you're kidding. Hey, are you still there? We forgot to get Wi-Fi. That's what we forgot here. We could get bounced because of Wi-Fi. What do you got going on there, Brian?
I'm in Erin O'Toole's office, and
That was supposed to be a surprise. Oh, well.
I got, well, I'm in his office. Didn't say he's gonna be here. And there's a Pokemon on his couch. This is an Adrano. They're not that rare, but they are somewhat hard to find. And, that's his couch. That's where he sits, the member of parliament for Durham. And he's got an Adrano hanging out on his couch. So with that,
You get in.
well, I'm gonna try. So here I am launching the ball. Got him.
All right, so that's Pokemon. That keeps Brian moving around. We're having a surprise VGR here. You can see where we are. We're over at this is the East Block, right, Brian?
This is East Block, yep.
East Block. So we're going to get a few minutes with Erin O'Toole and be able to ask him a few questions about programming, veteran programming in Canada and how it's developing and branching out of the central area of Ontario, where most of them are. Just missed the yoga out on the yard there. You can see over at the other block there, it's almost done being restored. Here's the bell tower going off. We're just filling some time between appointments here. We're just waiting for Erin to show up. We can talk for a few minutes before he comes. We just put back where we had it. There we go. He's busy. These MPs are busy peeps, so we'll get to him when he's ready for us. So I'm going to sit down and we can fill a little bit of time. I pressed play. We're playing now.
Is this thing on?
It is on.
That's what he normally does at the start, so I'm just doing it. It is hot up here. Like, the office is better, but it was like dumb hot walking up here.
And the water in the water fountain, I think it was like 100 years old.
There's a bunch of people wearing nothing but blue on the hill. I don't know what that's all about.
So, can we tell them anything about today? A subcommittee working on an inpatient facility or a center of excellence, as they want to call it.
You know, more the battle of working with government. Everything's painful and slow and takes a while, and we must consult and consult and consult and consult again. And that's where that old army attitude comes forward a little bit. You get in these rooms like, okay, let's just grab something, and can we bloody well just do something? Can we go? And it's just the tendency of everything is just put the brakes on, let's examine to death everything. And that's where my frustration's starting to come in with it a little bit, is, I'm willing to do the work, but oh my God, could we benchmark some progress here?
Yeah.
And that's the frustrating part.
It takes time to break ice. There has to be face-to-face, and it costs money to fly people all the way over here and then have a space set up and accommodation.
Especially if every time you break some ice, someone's refreezing it again, so you don't get anywhere.
Yeah, well, what about this? And it's all procedures, and then, the proposal has to be designed the right way, otherwise it gets thrown back or it fails. All the homework has to be done. We're even talking about having to budget in to pay for someone to be the in-state writer to make sure that it'll pass Treasury and all the parts thereof. So are we trying to get a legislation written? It's not legislation, but it's...
No, but what we're trying to get enacted here is something that will, it'll go to the highest levels of government. This will live or die on the cabinet table. And to do that, you're competing against all the other interests in the nation, the other 32 departments in the federal government. And so we have to produce something of not only, quality, but it's got to be in-depth enough, it's got to address the issues, and it's got to be obvious to the person reading it. And that's where it gets hard, because you know what it's like. You come home from any military event and you start throwing out your terms and acronyms, and everyone's blinking and staring at you like, what the hell is he talking about? Well, that's going to be even more doubly a threat here.
Yeah.
Is that we put something on paper and then we're not around to articulate it, and it's gotta be good enough to explain itself on its own in the setting it's in, and that's gonna be tough, right?
I was
So,
very fortunate yesterday to run into someone who's advisor to Treasury and talk to her a fair bit, and, you know, at the end, I was like, so, what do you need to see on there? What's something that Treasury is gonna be looking for? Like, for instance, we're trying to catch people early on before they get pushed out of regiment for symptoms. If we can demonstrate that we're gonna catch them early and get them into a program, a plan, and then they're not gonna end up having a breakdown and subsequent release from the military and potentially being ward of the state for life, which is gonna be expensive. There's gonna be cost saving in this.
And-
she's like, yes, that's the kind of things we're looking for. So there has to be a bit of sales pitch design within it.
as you work through these things too, so I threw some bad news at your feet there. The good news is if we table something that has to do with veterans and it manages to get its way to the cabinet table, there are people at that table, right? We got the government whip, we got the defense minister, and by God, I mean, there's guys sitting at the cabinet table that do know what we're talking about. So when we bring up things that maybe the VAC minister doesn't understand or Treasury Board doesn't understand, there's people at that table who do, and they should be able
They can
to
clarify.
take something that may be, 90% good enough and drive it the rest of the way forward, and that's kind of the thing. And then if that gets
You're
rejected,
talking about the layman and when things are a little bit too complex in their writing.
yeah, and then if that doesn't go the right way, well, we're sitting in the office of a guy who knows the veteran file well, is a veteran himself, he's in the opposition. So if the government fumbles what we hand them, the opposition has plenty of people that have served and know it. Speaking of which,
Hey
I
guys,
think
sorry
there's
I'm
someone
late.
who just came in.
Can we do this in my other office?
Yeah.
We totally
I
can.
think it's even better.
Oh, but we wanted to say hi to Sam Sharp.
Hopefully we did.
We did get set up here. There is, look at, come
In
sit
fact,
down.
just,
Well, it's my wardrobe. You'll see my other office.
Okay.
It's better light too.
there he is, we're gonna go.
There he
interview him.
is.
We're
Let's
just
follow him right here.
filling the people in on what we're up to today.
Well, Sam Sharp, tell Minister Hare to complete this project.
Can we just stand by it and just give me a little synopsis, or a little, what the issue is right now, what's moving forward with the Sam Sharp bust?
So this is one of my offices, and obviously I don't normally have a heavy bronze relief sculpture sitting in my office of a World War I veteran. Sam Sharp was the Member of Parliament for part of Ontario in World War I. He fought at Vimy Ridge. He raised the 116th Regiment, which is now the ONTARS, the Ontario Regiment. And he was the only MP re-elected while fighting in France in the 1917 election.
So he won an election while in the war.
He didn't knock on a door, he was knocking on the trenches with his guys, right? And it's an amazing figure. But the toll of war, the mental injuries that he suffered, particularly because he raised the regiment, so every loss, he recruited the young man. He wrote a letter to their mother or their loved one, and you could see in his letters he was breaking and had an obligation to his men. So eventually he had a breakdown, shell shock they called it then, and he was evacuated from the battlefield, brought back to Canada where he took his own life. So he was essentially written out of history. And the other MP from World War I that died in France has a full life-size statue right outside the House of Commons. George Baker, he died 100 years ago this spring at the Battle of Sanctuary Wood. He served in Parliament for quite a few years less than Sam. Same sort of things. They're both in the Book of Remembrance in the Peace Tower. But this guy, nothing. So when I was minister,
Okay.
working with Romeo Dallaire and others, we used Sam. You've attended the breakfast, right?
Yes, sir.
We use Sam as a teaching device to say, you know what? Guys suffering from Afghanistan, from peacekeeping, this is an injury that's been with warriors from time immemorial.
Yeah, it's
And
not.
his story is
It's
a
not new.
classic story of stigma that we don't
Exactly.
want to talk about suicide. We'll celebrate the man who was killed in action, but we don't want to get into this.
He was written out of history. you know.
Exactly.
When I mentioned him to Romeo Dallaire, he'd never heard of this guy.
Right.
And so we slowly since I got here as an MP, and then when I became minister, we advanced this proposal. We have the breakfast once a year. to talk mental health.
And that is a great breakfast.
It's an awesome event. We bring together everybody, and
Yes.
we have a couple of speakers talk on challenges with mental health. And the other thing is we wanted to put not a life-size statue, but Sam Sharp shouldn't be forgotten.
Absolutely
so
not.
We want to hang this in Central Block of Parliament. I'm not sure why Minister Hare is delaying this. Certainly everyone knows it was tied to me as minister, but I'll give him credit. Kent Hare spoke at the Sam Sharp breakfast this year, but he has to move forward.
And you gave one of the warmest introductions I've ever seen.
I try and wish him well because I
Absolutely.
want him to do well in
And
this
so
role.
do we.
But I'm not sure why he is not finishing this project that was actually
Any
started.
any opportunity to have something nonpartisan and on
Yeah.
veterans, it always should be. This is one of those moments where it's a kumbaya. And why wouldn't
And
it?
so to highlight the details then, because they're quite simple, first of all, people should be aware of Sam Sharp. And what you're asking for is that this is mounted in centerboard.
Absolutely. In fact, we had the artist do the size of it so that it fits on a pillar right beside the life-size statue of George Baker. And what better way, and as I say, it's never too late to correct history. The neat thing too, the artist, Tyler Briley, is a Toronto Fire Services firefighter who did 20 or so years on the job, and then a combination of mental and physical injuries had him leave being a firefighter early, and he became a nationally renowned sculptor. He fell in love with this project. He used to talk to Sam while he was doing it, and the whole experience has helped him on his own personal road to wellness. So there's so many good things here. This is why, come on, Mr. Hare.
We
So
need
let's
some
get this
kumbaya.
With that, we're gonna take 2 minutes here, let Aaron get himself sorted out, and you wanna meet? and
Just down in the other office with more light, more relaxed.
see you guys
Okay.
in a couple minutes. Perfect. So
I got my wallet.
Sure.
We're still alive.
Oh yeah, well, you may get a kick out of this.
Sorry I was late. I was at a funeral.
Okay. We always got to work around schedules, and things are tight, and we're going to another thing right after this. Is Erin's other office down here?
Actually, this way, first door on the next door to the left.
On the left. All right. What do we got here? These fancy MPs have these big fancy offices. Oh, this is fun. There we go. What does he got here? Wayne Gretzky signed. Toronto Blue Jays. Oh, Jason Bourne. What's he got over here? I don't even know what that is. That's that guy that threw the baseball bat. You know this guy. He helped write our pleadings for the court case. Yeah. Well, there you go. Things are a little slow going with getting organized, and we only have so much time. Look at that.
But isn't this a nicer view? We can actually turn the lights on if you want.
Yeah, the brighter the better. You can just squeeze into some seats right here. That'd be great. Should actually probably be right about here.
See what I mean? This is a much nicer room. And I've got some of my military stuff.
Does everyone have like a thing like this, or is this just?
Every
for-
MP
everyone's
tends
different.
to have a personal office, so this is my personal office. I got the weirdest setup on Parliament Hill because there's more MPs now, so they rent their office rooms. That room up there was originally used for storage. So I turned it into
Come sit down here.
my intern works. And it's a lounge with just a couple of couches. So I'd be lying to say if there wasn't a couple of beers consumed in that room from time to time.
No.
That's not a bad thing. With this, like, ambushing isn't my style, so I don't wanna lay everything out, we want it to be spontaneous, but some of the stuff I wanna ask you is, well,
Okay.
we're already on? All right, well, I'm just gonna do a preamble.
If you sit there.
There you go. So here's the preamble, Brian's little preamble, okay? I want this guy to give us some advice, not just to the veteran world, but to the advocacy world. So you're out there, you're a Canadian citizen, and you got an issue, and you want to advocate the federal government to act on it. And there's a lot of different ways out there. And I want some advice. I know a tool or two, I've used them. What do you recommend if someone says they got an issue, the federal government's my solution to it? What kind of stuff do you recommend they do to start seeing some action?
Well, the first step is you can speak to your own MP, and you and I talked about that last night, and you've had some challenges.
We did push-ups last night in front of the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So
Some of us look better at doing push-ups than others. And
I was in the back.
I did not look good doing them, but the first thing is talk to your own MP, because they represent you and they're your direct conduit to the federal government. But what I also find is also helpful is members of parliament, men and women, are just a cross-section of Canadians. So you'll get some veterans, you'll get some school teachers, lawyers, cops, nurses. So depending on what your issue is, talk to your MP, but also look, each MP tends to have a few areas that they like to focus on. So part of the reason I became Veterans Minister was the Prime Minister at the time knew my background in the military, knew my work with starting True Patriot Love, Treble Victor, I've worked with Wounded Warriors, anybody that shared my goals I'd work with. And that gives you street cred, it gives you connections, it also gives you an understanding of the issues. So if you have an issue, take a look at what MP might share your issues. So in our last caucus, there were some, my last Conservative caucus, there were some great police officers, retired police officers. In fact, we lost a few and a few retired. Really, really good people. I worked with one from BC named David Wilkes very closely on a lot of criminal justice issues. We were trying to change our party's position on marijuana a little bit to be a little more flexible with it.
Maybe preparing for the way it's going to end up going eventually?
Well, we wanted to have a real debate, because I don't want to go down that road,
No.
because I'll get all the trauma guys after me, but I've always said I approved record increases of medicinal marijuana when I was minister. But I always said, we've got to be honest with the guys. It won't work for everyone. It's not clinically proven for mental health. In fact, some physicians, some psychiatrists say it can be worse for your mental health. So we need more study. We do know that there's some basic work on chronic pain, anxiety, sleeplessness, a few of these things. So I always said, as long as it's done in conjunction with your doctor and your professional, we will support it.
Right.
So going back to what you're saying, find an MP that might have totally your shared interest, and they may already be involved in advocating on this issue, or they are more likely to take up your cause because they understand it and they share your concern.
And if you found an MP, or in that regard even a senator, that maybe they haven't served, but they sat for 4 years on the Veterans Affairs Parliamentary Committee or the Senate Committee, then there's also a base of knowledge there. And it's one of the things we were talking about before Aaron showed up to his office. I tried out, went through all his clothes, went through his drawer looking for stuff, didn't find much. I found a Pokemon on his couch as we went through.
A rare
Got it on film.
So those are all lies, but the Pokemon is true. But that aside, we're in a unique position right now because we have people at the cabinet table that have served. We also have people in caucus, and there can sometimes be cabinet caucus friction, and there's people in the opposition that have served. So there's people that know the files. And so what you're saying, if I can paraphrase, is say you're coming to the table and you want to talk about access for disabled. Well, look at all your 338 MPs and try to find people that know the file.
Yeah, let your MP know too, not just as a good place to start, but also as a courtesy. But yeah, all the time I find, a constituent will say, I've been corresponding with so-and-so because they advocate for autism. So, for example, my colleague Mike Lake, he's an MP from Edmonton. He has an autistic son named Jaden, and he became an MP and became a really big, now sort of national advocate for autism. I have someone in my office who has twin autistic boys. I reached out to Mike to say, how can I advocate? How can I learn? So that's what I mean. Mike Lake talks to parents from across the country because they know he understands their position. It's similar with, veterans, particularly with someone with PTSD in the home. Other people that understand the situation are easier to talk to, right?
Yeah.
So that would be my advice.
Aaron, go ahead, mate.
So, 2 weeks ago, we sat in a Legion meeting, and they wanted some recommendations on helping young veterans join the Legion. And we're doing our best to give them ideas. It's slow moving. It's like changing government to a degree. They have a system in place that they're really reluctant.
Why did you have to bring that up?
Well, for the sake of the fact that I brought up the lab project, and then the 15, 20 people in the room, most of them being the Legion, were like, the what project? And I was stunned that they didn't even know about the lab monument project. In my own riding, we now have Mark Strahl.
Yeah.
He's going to start pushing for the lab project get set up in his neighborhood.
I just saw.
We're good.
It'll say reconnect once in a while, but it's still going.
Okay. Well, the LAV project is terrific. It was started by Canada Company. When I was minister, we locked in Veterans Affairs and the Government of Canada as a partner for some of the commemoration money around it. But Canada Company has worked with General Dynamics, Land Systems, and Fanshawe College in London. Fanshawe College is now run by Peter Devlin, the former head of the Army. And they take the used and the retiring labs, and Fanshawe College demilitarizes them, because they're still a warfighting vehicle, right? And they make them suitable for a monument.
Like get all the comms gear out and all that.
Absolutely.
Make them durable to
Seal up the flares,
withstand weather.
holes and stuff
Very
like that.
reasonable cost.
Very reasonable.
Okay.
So then Canada Company said, your community can have one of these monuments to honor one of the fallen, to honor the men and women that served there, to educate your community on what ended up being the longest single Canadian Armed Forces mission in our history, right?
Right.
And you have to apply. So you have to say why your community wants it, how you're going to use this, and then there's some cost associated with it. But then you can earn one. So the first one, the first community was announced, and I attended that event, and not surprisingly, it was Fredericton. It's going outside the base gates for Gagetown and Oromocto.
Yeah.
My friend and buddy from the military, Brian McDonald, who's a provincial member there, was the big driving force along with veterans and the Legion. My community, we're doing one, and I'll tell you that the 6 to 8 legions in the wider Durham region are big time in favor of it. And I think this is a good opportunity for legions to start allowing more of a connection between the traditional war and Cold War era members and the newer guys and gals that they're trying to convince to join.
In some ways,
This is a great opportunity for us to have a get together on that.
Yeah.
We can have a
This-
kumbaya.
this can be an overt way to show that younger generation of soldiers that you're thinking about them. And I bring this up because just a year and a half ago, I was the president of my regimental association, and we mounted a Bren gun carrier in front of our armory. Great project, awesome, happy to do it. And you go throughout the community and you can find old howitzers and Sherman tanks and Sherman tanks
Old
and Sherman tanks.
Sabre aircraft on pedestals.
And when we brought up in some of the other organizations, oh, can we put a LAV in it? Why? Like, well, for the same reason you put a Sherman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I call the LAV 3, which is also cool in that it's made in Canada, but
Absolutely.
it is the iconic vehicle for that mission.
It's our Spitfire.
Right? Yeah, it is. 50 years from now, if someone's going to think of the Afghanistan war, what vehicle will come? It's going to be the LAV.
Right.
So while we have this opportunity to preserve and to sort of demilitarize some of them, we've got to take advantage of that, because it's not just important to remember now, which is why our last government did the National Day of Honor at the end of the Afghanistan war. A lot of people said, why are you doing that? You know, the war's been tough. Because it was a very profound mission, and we need to mark that. And if you don't start commemorating early, as we saw with the Korean War guys, they were forgotten for decades.
Absolutely.
Because it was so close after World War II.
Yes.
So this is an awesome opportunity, and the lab is special. Rick Hillier came to the launch of our local campaign.
Nice.
And he said, you know, this vehicle is the home, the kitchen, the bed, the bathroom, for troops. And there's a connection.
Hold on, gents. So we got a guy coming in here, Mr. DeZaro from Vernon, and he's saying that they mounted a Cougar from the Bosnia era in front of his armory, and he can take his kids there. He says that. He goes,
Awesome.
I can tell my kids that that was the vehicle I was in Bosnia with, and actually show it to them.
That's what it's
So
about.
that's the thing we're talking
Just
about.
to,
You hit the nail on the head. We've done this in the past.
He hit it on the head.
Why not? Well, the Bren gun, the Sherman, Oshawa, where I'm from, has a Sabre jet on a pedestal by the old the wing there. This is the next generation, right?
right. And so just to wrap it up, to make clear to y'all that it's not really hard to get this done, I made the phone call, and within 24 hours, I had the information given back to me of the cost breakdown that I could present to the local government in the city, and they had plans specific to the cement pad and a rough estimate of cost, which was about $5,000-$10,000, and then the vehicle itself is only about 15 to 20.
Yeah, the whole
It's-
thing you can do at a
about
basic
30,
level
35.
for about $25-30.
Yeah, $25,000-$30,000, and I'll tell you what, you can turn to the Legion, maybe get a little bit of money, or Veteran Affairs, different organizations. It's not about just begging the government, necessarily local government. There's ways to, and through driving through a bit of fundraising there, you're getting some awareness about it as well, and making an event of it. And it can be a good marrying up of the Legion to have that opportunity, because the Legion is right now trying to figure out how to connect to their local veterans, the younger generation.
So one thing I wanted to dabble in a little bit here is obviously we got a former service member here, Erin served, and then he winds up in cabinet pretty quick, relatively quick.
Relatively, yeah.
And, a lot of files get worked on, and throughout the veteran community there's going to be a lot of agreement and disagreement. I'm not really interested in that. I want to know what happened when you realized that you had to drop the file, hand it to someone else. Because undoubtedly you had a bunch of half-done projects that you're still trying to bring to fruition, every minister does, and then the election reality kicks in, and you're not going to be in cabinet because it's painfully obvious. How was that, knowing you had to go, here, your go?
That was really tough, and my wife and I were talking about this in the last couple of weeks, just how tough it was. She saw me because I was so passionate about it. I didn't fix everything. I wasn't a perfect minister. I made mistakes, but I was passionate. I think you guys know me well enough to know I was passionate about the role. We made a lot of progress, and I said to Minister Hare, and in fact I flew to Charlottetown, because as you know that's where the department's headquartered, after I lost in the month of the handover, and I spoke to all the employees there, thanked them for getting the backlog down, which was a big priority for us that nobody saw here, but we were getting backlogs down in PEI.
Good
And
news doesn't make it to the news.
it doesn't. And I asked them, show the same hard work and faith for Minister Hare that you showed me, because this isn't a file like about pipelines or about building infrastructure. Veterans Affairs is about people, and I want him to have success.
We needed success on that file.
Yeah, and some of the things are still going well, and I think they're going to keep going with a few of the projects we started. Very upset about Equitas. I won't dwell on that.
We might share that point of view.
But so there's some things I think they're doing wrong, but I know Walt Matinchuk's there. He's a great Canadian. He understands this file, and some of the things that started while I was there, I know will continue. So I'm not bullshitting. I wish him well. My job is I'll also hammer him, as I did when they sort of screwed up the ceasefire we had in Equitas. But if they make progress, I'll say bravo Zulu too.
It was unfortunate. We, from day one, were encouraging that they have good outreach and awareness within the veteran community on social media. We'd had a conversation once upon a time where, do you think you guys were aware soon enough about what was going on in social media? Did you realize how organized we were getting on that end? And you felt that,
Yes.
no, you did not have that. And we've been telling from day one, okay, you need to carry that over and you need to have someone in your office. Sabelle Wilson was fantastic to that end. Everyone still talks fondly of her and how engaging she was with every single stakeholder that was involved with the summits. And it's been difficult that there has been announcements made that weren't necessarily studied enough to realize what the effect would be, where they thought, hey, this will be good, and then it went really bad. One case in point was he came out on one occasion and stated that we have these two new great online programs dealing with OSIs for families, and within seconds people were already messaging me looking, hey, this is a one-pager from OSIS from 2012, and another one was just a general mental health Canada site that had a one-page section that was from 2013. And we're all like, no, like, don't lie, like, just be honest. And they haven't wanted to hear from us. And it's,
Well, as
what,
you know,
what can you do?
as you know, they're doing things differently. I'm
Yeah.
glad he kept a lot of the stakeholder people involved. They've reoriented the structure of them, and there's a number of different committees. As you know, because the first thing we worked on to improve right off the bat was MyVac, the online service, and I saw your post about, hey, your direct input from that session months ago has made it into upgrades to the MyVac. And so
We put that on the third episode of this,
Yeah.
actually, was, hey guys, there's some good news out there.
absolutely, and what I had hoped for the at-home training programs and the support for spouses battling a veteran with PTSD, these online tools that we had been preparing, we started under my watch. I would not have launched them until they were battle tested by that stakeholder group I created, and that's where I think they're missing is you can't sit in Prince Edward Island and create something for veterans without asking veterans to be a part of it. Right?
This is completely amateur, you can totally interrupt.
I just wanted to tell you that you have to be at CPS
And we have to be somewhere at 2 as well.
Okay, so we got another 5 minutes or so.
5 minutes.
I got,
So he needs to have the last
Does this
5
look okay
minutes.
for CBC?
Yes.
Are you in CBC?
So-
there you go.
one thing I wanted to throw out here is, we've talked about Sam Sharp and about that monument. We've talked about the fact that there's the Lav monument, and we'd like to hand the last couple minutes to you. What else matters in the community? What else would you like us and the viewers and possible future advocates to know? What's going on?
Well, I'm going to ask you now. I'm the advocate because you have the ear of the minister more
Yep.
than I do. So I want two things. I want
Okay.
sharp hung on the walls
Yes.
of Parliament because I'm worried that they're trying to delay this. I will applaud him to high heaven. You guys know I will compliment good work in this file. So that's one thing I want. The other thing I wanted to complete, which was something, there's so many things I wish I still had the ability to.
But you
to
don't.
go for. I don't.
Okay.
So here's what I want. What I wanted to go to was for veterans with OSIs that we're on ELB and we're trying different treatments. What we wanted to do was to create a wellness spending account. And if you see what we did in the past, you'll see where we were going with this. We started the service dog national trial and pilot and standardization. We started the equine therapy pilot and standardization. We were looking at things like mindfulness and yoga. And where we wanted to go was basically certifying standards for programs so that if a veteran in BC or in Nova Scotia goes to a provider, they know that VAC has sort of said these guys meet a certain standard. But then each year, as part of your treatment regime, you would have self-directed treatment options. So if you wanted to try Praxis out in Rocky Mountain House, you had this sort of bubble. If you wanted to do the COPE program, that Chris and Catherine Linford
Yeah,
run,
good program.
you could do that.
In
And
January.
because, as you know, there is no one magic pill or treatment or option for,
No, you
for
kind of
mental
have
health.
to shop around.
You do. So what we wanted to do, and I really hope the minister, and you can go on your stakeholder committees and say this,
Good ideas.
once you have about 5 or 6 of these things standardized and confirmed, then let the veteran with their partner and with their healthcare provider plan their own options. So if somebody wants to try equine, somebody wants to do an outward bound, because they've got a neat program too, and while they're doing ELB, while that is a time for getting well, let them take management, provided we ensure that they'll get consistent standards. So it's not just some horse farm suddenly saying, yeah, we're doing equine therapy, and it's really just riding lessons.
That's the challenge.
So I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that wellness spending account that the veteran and their family.
So that they
So-
start to see that all the different programs out there can be
Yeah.
seen as a package.
Sam
A
Sharp,
package deal, then you gotta go 3, 4, 5.
Sam Sharp had no options 100 years
No.
ago.
So with that, guys,
Right.
We do.
we're gonna wrap up here, and one of the things I'm gonna wrap up with is, obviously, there's a lot of things that Erin was doing that I agreed with, and there were some that I disagreed with, and at the same time, he reached out to guys like me and he said, do you wanna have influence, do you wanna get involved? And dragged people like us in, even while we were disagreeing with him on certain topics, he had, call it the nuts to pull the people that,
I'd say
forward like that.
Class.
And, nuts class, but you get the
I'm a
point.
vet too.
But you know, you led with example to keep it classy, and if we can have everybody at the table, that's ideal.
Veterans are not, I always say this, we're not just one monolithic group that we all have the same service histories, the same political opinions,
Right.
the same philosophies. We're different, but we share one cause. We all signed up for something greater than ourselves. So let's respect one another, fix the things that aren't working, highlight the things that are, because there are things that are positive out there, and then support people at risk and the groups and the advocates out there helping. And I'm glad to see you guys still doing it. I still do it in my own little way too. So great thing about politics is making new friends, and that's what I've done.
Thanks for that.
Hey,
You
thanks,
gotta go.
I've got to
We all
go.
gotta run.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, we're gonna go hunt Pokemons over on the floor of the.
I guess you could just stay in this building and hunt Pokemons.
Yeah. Okay, how do we
Are
start
you
this
going
thing?
to walk there with me? Okay, for a second.
Okay, everybody. DJR will be back. We're on the hunt for more interviews, and there might be another one coming right down the pipe here shortly. Talk to you soon.
Public safety.